All right, welcome to another episode of Younger by the Minute. I'm one of your hosts, Jamie Spicer, and I'm always here with my lovely co-host.
Jennifer Spicer, and I'm so excited today because we have a very special guest. We have the privilege of introducing someone whose journey mirrors so much of what we believe and so much of the philosophy at Precision Life. Her name is Lauren Pronger, and she is extra special. She's beautiful inside and out. She's a dear friend, but more importantly, she's a mother, entrepreneur, and wellness advocate whose book, SUPERWELL, beautifully captures the heart of her mission. And that's to help people take ownership of their health by reconnecting to their deepest why. Lauren's story is one of transformation, moving through personal challenges, rediscovering what true well-being means. And she's built a platform that empowers others to do the same. Her work is rooted in purpose, alignment, and the belief that wellness is not a trend, but a way of living. So welcome to the show, Lauren.
Thank
Welcome.
you so much, both of you. And thank you for that lovely introduction. I was just like, wow, listen to that. Keep going so much. And thanks for inviting me. I'm excited to dig in on this conversation.
Yeah, so are we, and we appreciate the time taken out of your busy schedule and day. And we know you personally, but it's nice to sit here one-on-one with you and get to know you even more and introduce everybody to what you do and what your book's all about.
Thank you so much. I appreciate
Yeah.
it.
And I think people, you have such a beautiful story. You've gotten to experience a lot in life, and I know that can sometimes seem glamorous, but I think it also really made you have to take a step back and learn how to stay rooted in your health. So your book, SUPERWELL, is rooted in purpose, living from your why. But can you share the moment or season in your life where that deeper why became clear to you?
Yeah, that's always a good place to start. And the funny thing, I have to laugh at myself right now before we started here, everybody. I'm double stacking my glasses here. As I was saying, I'm striving to be super well every day, and I'm having some eye issues in my left eye. And so I've got my, yellow blocking, my blue blocking glasses here and my regular glasses. So if I keep fooling with them, don't mind me, just all the super well stacks. But back to my why. So, ever since I was a little girl, I was always very curious about health and wellness. My family had a lot of health issues growing up, as everybody does, but my father had colon cancer, my mom had breast cancer, and, just heart disease, diabetes, you name it. And, I was always very, fascinated on how the human body worked. And even when I was a little girl, I remember, going and checking out books from the library. My friends were picking out, the Care Bears or what have you. And I was picking out books on the human body. And I loved the game Operation, if you all remember that, where
Mm-hmm.
you I just was fascinated by the organs in the body. And I don't know if that's, post-traumatic stress or also just wanting to safeguard the future of, making sure that I don't get sick or what have you. But really, I'll go back to 2011. My husband played professional hockey. He was in the NHL for 20 years. And we were living in Philly, had 3 little kids. He had a career-ending concussion, took a stick to the eye going 90 miles an hour, and
Whoa.
basically was bedridden for, weeks upon weeks, and I couldn't leave his side. And shortly after that, my dad had a very debilitating stroke. My parents were living in Naples, Florida. And then shortly after that, my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer and, 3 little kids. And here I am as a mother, wife, and daughter, trying to take care of all my loved ones that were really, in need of so much care and attention. And I just couldn't be enough for everybody. But we always demand so much of ourselves, and we're guilty of that as women. And as much as I knew about health and wellness and how to stay optimal, I was doing all the wrong things. I was getting up first thing early in the morning on an empty stomach, loads of caffeine because I was so darn tired. I wasn't fueling myself with any nourishing nutrition. Of course, cortisol, adrenals. I mean, Jen, we talk about this stuff all the time. Just,
Mm-hmm.
like boom. And then I'd get my boys off to school. I'd put my daughter in the running stroller instead of strength training. Jamie, you know all about that. I was
Yep.
burnt the candle there, just running, cardio bunny, because I thought that was the way to stay strong and fit and still fit in my size 4 jeans. Not realizing really the damage that I was doing to, my, HPA axis and adrenals and all of it. Just, my
Yep.
central nervous system was on fire. And then, I'd pick grilled cheese crust off of my kid's plate and maybe that would fuel me for a little bit. And then at night I'd have a couple glasses of wine, try to take it down a few notches and then try to lay my head on the pillow and you forget trying to fall asleep. That kind of went on for 3 months and found myself, at several doctor's offices and ran a lot of blood work. And of course, the damage was done and it was significant. And I was no good to any of my loved ones. Rock bottom. I had, my circadian rhythm completely flipped upside down, my cortisol awakening response. I mean, everything was flipped, tired and wired. Perfect symptoms of all of that. My thyroid had gone completely kaput. Main conductor organ. And, at the time, all the doctors were saying, okay, here's, a antidepressant, here's a Synthroid, here's an anti-anxiety, here's all these pills. And I said, listen, I got myself here. I'm going to do my darndest to try and unwind this. And how do you do that? Knowledge is power. And that's really when I started with the first program at Institute of Integrative Nutrition with their flagship program and went on for 3 years with them, the gut brain health connection, and then the year of hormone health, then got my master's with Nutritious Life with Carrie Glassman, and then went through training with Dr. Susanna Soberg in Denmark with to learn contrast therapy, heat and cold shock therapy, breath work, transcendental meditation, 2 different disciplines of Pilates. So it was a span of 12 years. As I always say, I really built my holistic tool belt. And so that was really, rock bottom for me, but, how I pulled up and out of it. And every day, it's a challenge of not entering and tiptoeing back to burnout. But I could go on, but I'm going to stop there because there's
Well,
more.
I
from somebody that has completely downregulated their HPA axis, it's one of the most horrible feeling things. The inability to be so tired when you go to bed, but then not able to fall asleep.
Mm.
Literally, like I sound dramatic when I say this, but like even now, there's times where I know I'm stressed. If I can't fall asleep right away, I'm like, oh my God, it's happening again because it's so terrible and nothing touched it with trying to sleep. And it's just hard. And I do think that we all have certain personality types, and it's clear that you're someone that just pushes through. And
Mm.
while that's a blessing, it can also have a downside. And I can relate to that because my body shut down as well. And
Mm.
what's interesting is one, I give you so much credit for just taking that and taking ownership of it and really grabbing it and learning everything you can, because that's what provoked me and us to add
Yep.
third arm of our practice, because it's not talked about. And as women, we are more sensitive to it. Or I should say the results of it are a little bit more catastrophic because of our hormones in general. There's a lot more going on. But now I'm uncovering even new things that I didn't know I knew, like that the onion just keeps peeling back in regards to, you do the contrast therapy, so the vagus nerve and doing all that. But now I'm really learning how the vagus nerve can actually be compressed if your cervical spine isn't correct. And so
Mm.
many women grind their teeth. Like there's just all these layers. So you really have to do all the little things. You
Mm.
have to wear the orange glasses or the red glasses. You have to sit on the PEMF mat. You have to do the contrast showers. You have to eat the foods, because not only is life affecting us and we can't pour from an empty cup, but all the foods that we eat, the soil is stripped, everything. We're not getting the micronutrients either. So it's like this whole encompassing thing that we really have to work at every single day.
Right. And I love the fact that your book is living your why, because that's with me working with my clients, that's the biggest thing I dive into and dig in on is the why, because on the surface level, everybody's going to come at and say, well, I want to look better, feel better. And of course, we all do.
Yeah.
But what are we willing to do or willing to give up? And what are we willing to implement in order to get to that why?
Mhm.
And as the quote goes, if your why doesn't make you cry, then your why isn't strong enough.
Yes.
And I love the fact that you said your tool belt, because I always use all the different platforms of diets that are out there. I call them like Batman's tool belt. It's like, which plan are we going to utilize this point of time during their journey to get to the end goal? The same thing as what resource are you going to use? Are you going to use a pump mat? Are you going to use this? Which tool are you going to use? Because you have to be very strategic in how you do it and in the way that you do it. Like you can't just start at one part of the phase and skip over to other part. There's a sequence of events that you need to utilize in order to get to that. Otherwise, you could also cause more harm than good and not realize it, even though you're trying to do what's in the best interest of yourself.
Well,
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think also people need to remember that the body does whisper first. And so, like, we tend to ignore it. And so then all this dysregulation happens. And, we are exposed to all these lights and it's just every little thing. So, you talk about wellness and you talk about it as it's more because it is more than like superfoods and exercise and all of these things. But how do you define wellness and how is it different from what you typically see in the wellness industry?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I appreciate all that you all just shared there too. And that's why, I love aligning myself with you because I think we're very like-minded. As we know, the wellness space is so noisy, and everybody thinks they have the next quick fix, whether it's a pill, a supplement, a diet plan, what have you. And I think you all, believe in the same message that this is truly a lifestyle. And Jamie, you spoke about that of sometimes people think, "Oh gosh, if I just get and I get these questions all the time from people in my community, if I just get a PEMF mat or a biomat, or if I start doing contrast therapy, or if I take this supplement, or if I get this, now we have the GLP-1s, like all of that, that's going to fix all my problems." And
Mhm.
I feel like, the book that I wrote, it's a lifestyle and it's not for everybody, but it's a blueprint of things that I have, super well stacked through my time and my, crawl out of burnout. It's truly, I mean, this book right here is your burnout insurance. That's why I
Yeah.
wrote it. That's my intention. That's my why. That's my legacy. And it's
Mhm.
timeless. And it's actually practices that have been around for years and years and years that our ancestors, my great grandparents, I mean, I used to go to my grandparents' farm all the time and spent so much time there. And, we'd go out in the garden and pick all the fresh, fruits and vegetables. And, it was just good, clean living. And a lot of that is in here is that it's free and, it's accessible to everybody, but it's truly really not a one fix, and you're going to feel great every
Yeah.
day. And that's my mantra in life. I am the well, striving to be super well. Why the heck not? And I'm here to be a guide for others to do the same.
Yeah.
And I emphasize the word striving because as Jen said, like it's a constant battle, like for all of us, especially women like us that are very sensitive. The central nervous system can get set on fire with anything. And I think it's because we're so compassionate and we're trying to, do it all for everybody. And as so many women are, but that's a slippery slope. So every day I get out of bed and I say, you know what? Like today, I'm having an issue with my left eye. I wear contacts and, okay, I'm striving to be super well today. The wheels are falling off here, but you do your darndest best and you kind of go back to what are some basic things and you evaluate what do you need in your day? That, is it more breath work? Is it, taking a restorative walk instead of, hitting the weights heavy? Is it, just good soulful connection? And, the whole super well living method is based upon 8 pillars and 8 intentional pillars. And the number 8 is because it's interconnected, like the infinity symbol.
I
There's
love that.
no, yeah, there's no broken chain in there because all the pillars are vitally important. And I'm not saying, they range from, well aging to longevity to optimal sleep, nourishing nutrition, nature connection, soulful connection, emotional well being, by balance flow, which is movement. And I'm not saying you have to, hit them all for hours and hours, but look at what we're doing here. This is soulful connection. I hit that pillar today. I got out this morning sun. I did a little walk in nature, with my dogs. Like you just try to hit whatever you can. And especially when you know what your body needs more of, on a day where I need more mindfulness, like pay attention as and you said, those whispers. We wear these wearables as, data and metrics, but also our body's constantly telling us something. Like right now with my eye, I know my immune system is fighting something and I'm dealing with a lot of grief. I lost my brother in June to heart disease and I'm an open book about this. Like that's what I want to share with everybody in this community. I want to be your super well BFF of being like, I'm not perfect. I'm the furthest thing from perfect, but every darn day I strive and I think when you have, people that come to, like social media and they share the real, people are attracted to that. That's what I'm attracted to. And I want to hear about, the hard times and how you're overcoming it, not just, oh, I've got it all figured out and I'm perfect and look at my glorious life.
Well, no, and I love that because looking at you, I mean, you are perfect. You're like just everything. Like, and you are though, but I think it's because you embrace all those pieces. Like, I absolutely love and get the biggest kick out of when you like wear your eye masks on the airplane. I'm just like, I need to be more like that.
Right.
Like, you don't give a shit.
No,
Yeah.
I call it skincare up in air. The best is when the, flight attendants will be like, "Oh my god, this is genius." We went to Finland last, Christmas, and so it was a long flight, and all the stewards, they were like, "Can you give me a facial, like, in the morning?" Or I'm like, What is this? This is hilarious." But I really don't I mean, you should see my husband. I mean, he's like, just shakes his head, like, "Here she
Yeah,
goes."
but he participates. Like,
Yeah.
I'll see you
Oh,
posting
Yeah.
things when you guys go on your morning walks and you both have your eye masks on. And because Jamie, I like remember we've been away and you'll be like wearing them.
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
the best. And then I
Yeah.
spray on the plane, I'll spray all the hydrating mist because, we don't wanna have our skin get all dehydrated up there.
Right.
And then
Right.
Chris wears glasses, and so I'll spray him just joking around, and he gets so mad, and I go like, like windshield wipers.
Yeah. I
Anyway.
I love it.
want to dig in on what you had said because this is kind of way I interpret it is how you strive with your 8 pillars.
Mhm.
And what I hear is the goal is to strive to get back to a state of balance at the end of the day.
Yes.
Because each day brings new variables. There's different stressors. We live in a state of stress we get used to. Like my job and what I do day to day is an environment that is stressful, but it's a stress that I get accustomed to. It's almost like if I do the same workout over and over and over, it's a stressor, but I get acclimated to it. And until I change things, it's either gets worse or better.
Mhm.
So I think like with your 8 pillars, like if you, like you said, you don't have to do all of them, but if you can pick ones, start small and start adding as you go, or pick the ones that you get the most benefit out of it, I think is a great place to go with that. So I think, yeah, your body's going to go through things each day, but getting it back to a state of balance is key in order. And that way, the next day, you're kind of starting with a fresh slate, if you, at least as fresh as a slate as you can.
Mhm.
And then the other point you brought up was, everybody's wearing these,
Wearables,
the
Yeah, like,
iWatch
yeah.
or
Whoop,
The
the
whoop.
the
CGM,
Whoop and stuff.
got it
And
all.
the CGMs, and I love them. I think they're great, except for the fact that a majority of people don't understand them, and they put so much weight in it without understanding what the true diagnostics, what it's telling it is, and they misinterpret. And some people will take it way too far to the extreme, or they'll, go searching to YouTube for information, or they'll run to Amazon and they'll just start buying supplements
Yep,
when not knowing the quality of it. So,
yep.
a good example of that one would be is heart rate monitoring. A lot of people refer to caloric burn based on the heart rate. Well, it depends on what heart rate range you're in.
Mhm.
Depends on what expenditure of energy you're using. Are you using glycogen, oxidation, or ATP?
Yeah.
And depending upon what your goal is going to depict on whether or not you're in that right range. So, again, it can be a great tool. Just make sure that you are seeking not someone to teach you how to use it correctly, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, and let me clarify that for listeners that might not know the verbiage. You're somewhat saying like if somebody wakes up fasted and they're doing fasted cardio and they're putting their BPMs over 150 or 135, it's too much for what they have calorically.
Well, you fasted or not fasted because you're more in an oxidated
Right.
state. Your heart rate is so high that you're using more of oxygen than you are glucogen, which or
Mhm.
glucose. And if you're trying to burn fat, then you're
Yes.
going to want to be in that more glucogen range. Now, if your goal is to be running marathons or do high rocks or then okay, you're in the right range because you need to be in that threshold.
Mhm.
But if the goal is to optimize fat burning, you're not in the right range.
Well, and I say that because I don't know about you, Lauren, but I'm very much wired. Like one of my biggest stress relievers was working out and I train hard, or at least that's how I was used to. And you brought up one of your 8 pillars about just being more restorative until I wore a continuous glucose monitor and realized that when I would have a stressful event at work and my go-to was to go out onto the workout floor and take my stress out on the gym, I was actually causing myself to release even more blood sugar, which became more inflammatory.
Yep.
So, like, those tools are great, but I also think that coming back to self is one of the biggest things that we
Yep.
tend not to do, and it's because we have so much noise, and that's why I like the outside with nature walks, because that's where I'm like, okay, I can really get close to my faith, or I can hear what my body's really needing, because we're not really turning into ourselves, or turning inward to listen to ourselves, and I think that can be very detrimental when we don't know. And also being self-aware, like, I have to be careful with the monitoring systems because I'm a highly neurotic person, so I can really just get really rigid.
Yeah.
I'm, you know?
Yeah. No,
Mm.
I completely agree, and I hear that a lot from people in my community. I have always been a metric data-driven individual. I mean, I wear a Whoop, an Aura, a CGM. I've been a
Mhm,
part of Levels Health app for a long time. And I think some people it's an individual preference, like,
Mhm.
if you like metrics and you want that accountability, some people don't wanna know, and I am always, in the mindset of improvement. And, just in the 3 years that I've been wearing a continuous glucose monitor, I mean, the things that I have learned, the insights, I have never been in better super well shape in my whole life because it's held me accountable. And it's not just the food you eat, the food order. It's, as you said, Jen, it's the stress, it's how you
Yep.
work out, it's your sleep.
mhm,
And I find it so fascinating because, eventually they're going to have an insulin, registered 24
mhm.
monitor, which is going to be
Better.
well, yes, because really insulin's the villain behind,
Yep.
really going on. That's the one that we need to be cluing into more. That's the one that's constantly being taxed with our pancreas kicking it out, kicking it out. And, we live in this society of a 24/7 cortisol drip and also accessibility to overprocessed food whenever we want it. DoorDash, nobody's moving. You're sitting at your
Mm.
desk. Like all of those things are playing into why we are in this metabolic crisis right now.
Yep.
And, I personally just want to see those numbers, and I've learned so much, and I'm a nerd like that. But I think, as you were saying too, Jamie, it's really about looking at all those pillars. And I always, use this analogy when I do speaking events, because people get overwhelmed by all of it. And I break it down by saying, okay, let's just talk about 4 main pillars. Like if 8 overwhelms you, here we are sitting in a chair. We've got 4 legs. 4 great legs to keep us stable would be nourishing nutrition, optimal sleep, balanced flow, your movement, and say mindfulness. Those are 4 solid ones. Now, okay, if we take 1 leg out, we've got 3 legs. You can still sit. You're a little unstable. Maybe we're gonna take out, um, nourishing nutrition, or we're gonna take out movement. So we've got 2. Well, you can't sit on a chair with 2 legs, like, and if you
Mhm.
take out that leg of optimal sleep, that's the one that took me down in burnout.
Yep.
Every time I tiptoe towards burnout, it's always optimal sleep. So as you talk about wearables, that to me holds me accountable. There's
Yep.
no lying in those metrics. If
Yeah.
No.
I drink, and I have 20% and think I sleep well, and a lot of people think they do. Oh, no, no. Your HRV, your Whoop is going to tell you the next
Yep.
day you had any alcohol. And I'm not against that. I live by an 80/20. I always am very honest about that. But I want to know what my deep sleep is, what my REM sleep is. And you were talking about the vagus nerve. I'm huge into the vagus nerve
Yep.
activation. I wear a neuropod device, and I mean, I do a lot of manual vagus nerve activations too, just on my own with an oil before bed. When I don't do that, I mean, I see a noticeable difference in my REM sleep, and it's just so powerful. I mean, that, as we know, is our pathway to tapping into our parasympathetic nervous system that we all need to live more in. Like, that's the
Right.
problem with society is
Yep.
Yeah.
that cortisol drip is sympathetic, fight or flight 24/7, and it's not how we're intended to be. And no wonder we're all, like dealing with, the world just falling apart here with
Right.
everybody.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Like, I love the data. We have a CGM that we have our clients do for nutrition for 30 days. Because
Yeah.
just like in financials, numbers don't lie. There's no emotion in the numbers. The numbers are what they are. They do hold you accountable. I incorporated a CGM course with our clients because, just like you had brought up GLPs, like, GLPs are not going anywhere. GLPs used appropriately can be very beneficial.
Yeah.
So for me, it's educating the client.
Mm-hmm.
So when they're wearing the CGM in that data with the people with the GLPs, it shows them like, hey, you were running way too low, way too long. It reinforces the fact that us telling them need to eat. The data takes away the opinion of what someone might have and gives you factual data of where you need to go.
Yeah.
Again, there's no emotion in it. It's not my belief system like, well, you need to go keto. It's not my opinion. The data is showing us that.
Yeah.
It's you need to fast because the data is showing me that. It's you need to eat more because the data shows me that.
Well, and maybe I may not have
No, you
articulated.
clarified it.
No, the one thing I will say is one of my other missions is to not be such a perfectionist. So it's like wearing these, I wear them. Actually, I'm getting a new Apple Watch for it because I also think that Jamie needs to start tracking his sleep again because the numbers don't lie, and it's just for me, it's one of those things that I had to have self-awareness on so I wouldn't become so rigid where I then obsess. And that helps me be a better provider too, because I do have some patients on the Stellos where I'm like, okay, we'll look at your data together. And I also have a patient right now that I can't get her to respond from an adrenal perspective. I've gotten her hormones where they need to be, but her endo has her on a GLP-1 and it's way too high of a dose. And we're just chasing our tail because not only is she's not eating, so she doesn't have any cholesterol. So her pregnenolone isn't even coming up. Like it's just all this thing. And so I want her to do the Stello because she needs to see that she's really malnourished, like her hair's falling out, everything. And so it's just, there are tools to help us utilize all these things that God has given us better. And I do believe in them. I have to look at it and be like, okay, how are you going to fix it? And then one thing I can do better is restorative breath work. So
Yeah. Oh gosh, no, can't we all? I mean, it's a crazy season right now. And my kids always laugh because I turn to my breath work without even realizing it. My brain will just like they hear
That's
me,
awesome.
they're like, "You're doing it again, mom. The breathing, we hear you." But it's just how I automatically respond to when life is a little overwhelming and stressful. But yeah, and kind of getting back to what you guys were saying about the GLP-1s and so forth, I think the wearables, and as I hear from both of you, and you're both experts at what you do, practitioners. And so I think it helps you all do your job better and
1000%.
that accountability because you can tell your clients, like all day long, the same thing with me. And until they actually see the metrics, like when I
Yep.
went through burnout, and I went through burnout a few times in my life, like sometimes worse than others. Soon as I start seeing that blood work come back, and I am rigid about my DEXA scans, my blood work. I mean, I check it all my hormones all the time because I've learned soon as I start tiptoeing there and I see that, I'm like, oh no, okay, you gotta figure this out, Lauren. No, 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 we're not going down that place. So I think it's good, for you all to have those tools in place because, like you said, Jamie, the numbers don't lie.
Well, and the one thing that we've always preached is people will come in because they're gaining weight. And if they haven't looked at their thyroid or adrenals, or they come in and they want hormones and they haven't looked at their thyroid and adrenals, like we really try to go into the root cause. And actually, that was what was really cool. Like we started over the summer, Jamie had something done and we were over in Europe and the doctor over there was like, I want him to take this genomics test for something that I didn't even know we could do genomics on. So we're going to really dive in with that too, because really honing in on what somebody's genetics are, but
Yes.
also helping them remember that they actually are the ones that can turn the keys on and off. Like we have modifications based off lifestyle. So, really just trying to take all the little puzzle pieces together and then using the tool belt and really trying to make it better. But I wanted to lead into another question as we're on this subject. Women, especially, as you've said, struggle with losing themselves in the roles that they have as a mother, wife, leader. How do you help women reconnect to who they are with also making them not feel guilty?
Yeah. Yeah. I think number one is just lead by your own authentic journey and in sharing, the vulnerabilities. And also, letting them know you don't have to do it all. You don't have to, accomplish all, 40 SUPERWELL stacks in a day or what have you. That's not what this is about. That actually defeats the whole, method. It's supposed to be calming. And I think, women, as we were talking about earlier, are perfectionists to a fault. And it's about doing the best you can, but until we rebuild and fill our own cup up, we're not going to be, as good as we can be to the loved ones in our lives. So, and I think it's always challenging for, women that have young children and they can't get, perfect optimal sleep and they're trying to do the nursing nutrition and hit all these pillars. And I was there, my husband, was on the road, all the time when my kids were little, and I did have babysitters to help, but it was still me alone. So I think it's all about accepting, where you are in the season of the life that you're in, and giving yourself grace, and figuring out, honing in on what are the needs that are really going to move the needle for that woman. Is it, really protecting your sleep, and how do we work that into your lifestyle? Do you have a spouse that can help so you can get more hours? Is it, learning breath work and forms of meditation that you can practice literally when you're in carpool line? Or, is it more movement? Do you need to move after meals? Like, or is your day job, where you're more sedentary? Like, let's figure out ways for you to get a walking treadmill. I mean, and Jen, I know you're brilliant at this too. I have a hack for absolutely everything. I am known for my SUPERWELL stacks because it's all about time efficiency. I mean, I have from AM till PM, everything is doing it efficiently, but also really intentional in why I'm doing it. I'm not going to waste my time. I mean, I have 2 businesses. I've got 3 kids, I mean, I've got a lot going on too. And so I think, what I share are my hacks through the years of how I have learned to knock as much out, without stressing myself out. Like, my favorite one is at night. I do, and this is where all the fun happens on Instagram. I do my bed of nails, the acupressure mat, legs up the wall, and red light therapy mask on. I've got the castor oil pack on. I've got my vagus nerve stimulator on. I'm doing my breath work. And it may seem overwhelming, but it takes me literally 5 minutes to get us all strapped on, and then 20 minutes. And I'm telling
Yep.
you, I mean, that sets me up for some serious optimal sleep that night. So, I mean, that's just one of many that I practice. And because I'm a go-getter. I mean, I like to get as much out of the day as I can. And I'm constantly learning and trying, new time efficient hacks and adding on, tools and technology. But really, you don't even have to have fancy tools and devices. I mean, I a lot of times don't use them at all throughout the day.
Well, you got me. I'm doing the cold face dunks again because our cold plunge is down. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh, I can't. And because I felt so puffy when I had traveled to Houston, and then the legs up the wall. I'm like, oh, I got to get back to that. Like, and that's the thing, like having these little guides and just getting back to it. And I've been enjoying reading the book, and just I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, yeah, I forgot about that. And I forgot about that. Or like, this is cool. I've never done that. And you really do multitask well. And so you provoked me. Jamie,
Oh,
when I was reading my Bible for the day and I was on the shake plate and with the red light mask, I text her and I was like, I feel like Lauren.
And I love that you disclosed how long it actually took, because that's the first thing everybody says. I don't have the time.
yep.
No, we have the time. We just have to make the time. And,
Mhm.
to take 25 minutes of selfishness so you could be selfless for the rest of the day, the next day, it's nothing.
Yeah.
And it's a very needed thing to do. And I think it's one thing that a lot of people forget to do. And you did bring up mothers, especially because you are carers.
Mhm.
Is you forget to take care of yourself first and foremost, and you're just keep pouring from an empty cup, and
Mhm.
then eventually, as the body is whispering, starts yelling,
Yes.
and then it's too late.
Yep.
Well, it keeps the score. Like, I don't know if you've heard of Louise Hayes, but
Yes.
y-
Oh,
like,
oh my God, Jen. This is what every morning. I mean,
I
Yeah,
love it. I
yes,
have
we
that book.
yeah.
it's the best. Yes.
But it's true, like, it's gonna manifest somewhere, and I love that our husbands are into this too because I think men have also this different stance of, I'm not gonna show weakness or vulnerability or
Yeah.
I'm not, and that takes a different toll, so
Well,
it's really
especially if two
nice.
ex-hockey players are supposed to be tough and macho, and supposed to have, ooh, we're walking
Yeah.
around with eye patches and stuff.
There you go. Hey, that's why we love you guys. You're keepers.
Yep, yep.
That's
Yes.
funny.
Oh my gosh. No, it's so true.
Well, for someone listening who feels seen by your story, what's one thing you would like them to leave with today?
Gosh, I would say start today. Um, and use my mantra as your every morning when you get out of bed. I am the well. I'm maybe okay, but darn it, I'm gonna strive to be super well every day. I mean, like really, it's very much like Nike, just do it. Why not? It's such a, powerful motivation of I want to, live my best life and feel, as optimal as I can until the day that the Lord takes me out. And that's my motivation of strength training, working on my grip strength and working on, my muscle gains and, fueling my body with nourishing nutrition, all of this because life is beautiful and I don't want to, be sick the last, 20 or however many years or not be able to run with my grandchildren. And my
Yep.
kids are so cute because they're like, Mom, someday when we have kids, so Jack is 23, George is 21, and Lila's 17. So they're not having grandkids yet, not happening. But someday, like we're gonna have this book and we're gonna be like, this is your super well granny. And that was to me like just, tears because that's what I wanted this for. That's my legacy and it's timeless. None of these habits are going to change. I mean, as we
No,
said, this is just about going back to some basic things of being, mindful of how we stay, living our best optimal super well life. So I would encourage them to start today. It's never too late. And Jamie, as you talked about too, like excuses of, well, I don't have time. No, it's about practices of meal prep, and I know you all are big on that.
yep.
I cook on Sundays and Wednesdays. Chris and myself tag team. He's the grill guy, I'm the inside girl. I roast
Mhm.
all the vegetables, I do the steam stuff, da da da. And it's habits.
It's the way we
And
are.
and it doesn't take that long. And, guarding your boundaries of sleep and making sure you're getting good sleep and it just all of the things, the practices you can put into place. And it's a choice every day. And if you fail one day or you fall short, pick yourself up the next day and say it again.
That's where the why comes in.
That's right. That is right.
That's what keeps you on the wagon, because the minute life happens, and life will always continue to happen, life will always throw you a curveball. But that why is the deciding factor of, will you be off plan for 48 hours, 24 hours, 2 months, 2 weeks, whatever. That why is the driving factor to get you back up.
It's true. And honestly, like I think hanging something up or having something to help you, whether it's a wearable or somebody in your a support system, because oftentimes when those curveballs happen, that's when all the little pillars for me anyway, I'll be like, oh shoot, I didn't do that. And that's when
Yep.
I need it the most. And so it's like really buffering in that time and taking a breath and just resetting. It's huge. Um, what is what's up next for you with Superwell? Do you have any events in the area coming up or new projects that you're excited about?
Oh my goodness. Always so much up my sleeve. So 2026 is going to be very busy. But always mindful of, not biting off more than I can chew. Um, so I am creating an app for my community, which is exciting. It's going to kind of house everything because I already have a massive course, that's on my website, which is www.laurenpronger.com. And then obviously have the book and launching a podcast, which I'm thrilled to have you both on. Chris and myself will be co-hosting. He's not going to be there with me all the time because he's also broadcasting and doing 1,000 other things. But so that will be called Well to Super Well. And then I'm also doing a lot of 1-day activations and 3-day masterminds at a lot of the wellness resorts that I work with, because that's my other business is Well Inspired Travels. So I'll be coming on property and doing 1-day activations for travelers, but then also I always host my own retreats, and then so just busy, all the things, but growing appropriately and always being mindful of not getting myself near burnout, because just when you're in the midst of growth and all these beautiful blessings, curveballs always come. And we've got to, gear up for that. And, Jen, I love that you're such a woman of faith too, because something that I always talk to my children about, and my oldest one is going through some shifts and things with his professional life. And I just said, when life is calm, and the ocean waves are really smooth and everything, that's when I really lean into the Lord, and I just give him so much grace and, just like gratitude for giving me this time to recharge my batteries. I don't know. You guys grew up in the same era probably that I did. Remember the game Contra, like where the guy's battery pack died down?
Yep. Yep.
I look at when God gives us those blessed times where life is smooth and everybody's good, kids are good, check, check, business is good, check, check. I'm like, store it up. Okay, baby, let's get that back up, because, curveballs come all the time. And I was telling my son, like right now, your battery is so low, but those are the times where you need to be really thinking about, like optimal sleep, nourishing nutrition, all the things, praying, constantly you like giving it to the Lord, because he already has our plan in store. He already
Yeah.
knows what's happening to my son Jack. He already knows what's happening to me. And we just have to allow him to lead and guide us that way. And because so often we pray when life, is turbulent and messy and the waves are crashing. And I lean in more than ever when life is good, and it's about finding that beautiful balance.
I love that. It's reminds me of something that Jamie says, like, when if we don't show gratitude when we have for the things that we already have, he's not going to give us more because we're not even appreciative of that.
Right
And
of.
so, and like I love the whole wellness retreat thing. I actually would love I'd heard about your travel company before I had met you, and I'm like, "Oh, we need to go," because we've done some retreats, and that was a really good way to disconnect. And I just think you are being such a good role model, especially to your children, and you're going to be such a great grandparent because I remember watching my grandparents decline, and it's so hard, it's just like if they had just taken a little bit more care of themselves, that type of thing. And so you are leaving a legacy, and you're giving people, especially women, just this ability to remember that they have to put themselves first. And by being well and super well, it actually benefits the entire world. And so that's good.
Yep.
Yep. Thank you so much.
Well, we appreciate you being on the show and carving out the time again. We really thank you for that. It's been great to learn more about SUPERWELL and you. We, of course, always look forward to running into you at any of the events that go on in St. Louis, and let to carve out some personal time.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, both of you. I love the conversation. I literally could talk for hours
I
and
know.
hours.
I'm like, I don't want it to be done. We'll have to do a redo on yours or
Yep.
keep going. And
Yes,
so
we could
thank you,
get part
Lauren.
and get Chris on. Yes.
Yeah,
There we go.
we would love
There we
that.
go. We just won't have to get into hockey. Then we'll really be down the road.
Oh God. We'll do part 2 and 3. You guys can talk about that.
All right.
Thank you, Lauren. Have the
Thank
best day.
Well, thank you.
So appreciate it. Okay, talk
All right.
soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.